Jaeden, what a week. So usually just kind of peek behind the curtain, guys. Like Jaeden and I always have, obviously pre-meetings before we do these, and we're like, okay, so what's like really popping? Because we could talk about a million things, and as you know, Jaeden has a bunch of other podcasts which he covers all the news. So we try to sort of figure out like what's really popping. And there's a ton of things popping, and we thought that there's so many, it's kind of impossible to have individual episodes on this. So we're going to do something we don't usually do, which is to sort of like talk a little bit about the state of AI right now, because there's some huge news coming out. And by the way, Jaeden, I know we're not going to talk about it much on this thing, but stay tuned, guys, because AIbox.ai has this very cool new thing. I'm just going to hint at it. It's this whole marketplace thing, which is super cool. I'm not going to talk about it now. Jaden's like, no, it's okay. But like, Jaeden, future podcasts, all right? So like maybe the next 2 or 3 podcasts, we're going to do that. Okay, so let me just kind of throw a couple things out at you, Jaeden. First of all, I think it was the Wall Street Journal sort of saying that, maybe it was New York Times, I think it was the Journal, saying OpenAI is now planning their IPO for the fourth quarter of 2026. The whole idea is they want to beat Anthropic to market. Totally makes sense because Anthropic is killing it these days. Jaeden, obviously, OpenAI needs a ton of cash, and it sounds like Amazon is ready and SoftBank is ready to open the keys to Fort Knox for them. I'm seeing stuff around XAI. I'm seeing stuff around SpaceX. Where do we want to start with this?
Okay, well, I mean, I think the concept right now of the IPO battles in 2026 is really interesting for a lot of people, because if you look at the last 5 years, we've basically been in a giant IPO freeze. I mean, maybe like last 4 years solidly, but like people are not taking their companies public really since the end of 2021, when it felt like we had a bubble after COVID of all of the software companies. Nobody wanted to go public, partially because a lot of people that had raised money during the ZERP era, their valuations were so big and inflated, they couldn't really justify that valuation anymore when the market sort of popped. And so we saw this massive IPO freeze. In addition, we had the wrath of Lina Khan, who was, stopping all of the mergers from happening. You had people like Figma and Adobe that wanted to merge, and it got blocked. And so we just had this like terrible merger market, this terrible IPO market. And 2026, it feels like everything is opening up. And we're also coming on the backs of just like an absolutely historic run, especially for AI companies, of these software companies getting massive amounts of money, but staying private for longer than anyone has done before. Like the size of these private, if you had 10 years ago, these companies would have been public like way in the past. So it's just crazy they've gone so long. And then we have some crazy news, which we'll also get into, of some of the biggest private companies merging and turn into these like super giant conglomerates. It's wild. So we're gonna get into all that. Let's talk about OpenAI first. I think the concept of beating Anthropic to the market is very interesting, because it wasn't very long ago that I actually heard a Dario wanted to be OpenAI to the market. And so it's like we go from this IPO, it's kind of like feast or famine. We go from this IPO freeze where no one wants to do anything to all of a sudden everyone's like, we got to get in there first. And my question is, why would there be a race in the IPO market? Is it because if OpenAI goes first, maybe their stock goes up and then drops, and Anthropic's, it's going to look worse for them? Or is that what they're worried about? Like, why wouldn't they, if you were really, really confident about where your company was, wouldn't you want to go second to see how it played out, give yourself the most time to grow? That's my question.
Yeah, it's so the journal was, I think, saying something along those lines, right? Which was they want to be first to market. And look, I'm not an investment banker, so I I'm sure other people could offer better comments on this, and please do. But the idea is, there's so much money just like chomping at the bit to invest in one of the big things. Now, obviously, Google is already, everything's priced in, Microsoft is priced in, all that kind of stuff is priced in. So we have like OpenAI and Anthropic and X as well to a certain extent, right? But it's really these two companies. And so the idea is, I think Sam is thinking, if we can get to the market first, that's where the big chunk of money will come. But Jaeden, I'm with you, and I'm not making predictions or anything like that here. But I am saying that in terms of just value, doesn't it seem like, this is not financial advice, doesn't it seem like Anthropic is a better value? I mean, you think about this, like you think about the amount of money that OpenAI has already spent. Now they're going to go into ads. We're going to sort of see how that works, but there's a lot of things at play here, right? There's how are free, customers going to relate to ads? Are they going to all of a sudden sort of like find their alternative and go over to Gemini, which doesn't have ads, and they get for free? And then when I think about the big money, I think that that's the exciting part for OpenAI, which is the SoftBanks of the world, the Amazons of the world, et cetera. But Anthropic has those partnerships too, and Google owns it's a decent percentage of Anthropic. Remember when we were first talking about this, Jaden, probably 2 years ago on this podcast, I think, when Google was investing, it was like 300 million. Remember in the early days of Anthropic? And it's like, wow, that's a lot of money for that. But holy, that's really paying off.
That was
And
a
the
good
subsequent investment.
investment. It
Yes,
wasn't
that was
even Google. It was Google Cloud, and they were just kind of like, "Hey, we'll just like do it for the cloud credits. Like, you come spend your money back here. We'll give it to you." It was like one of those deals. But boy, oh boy, like the
I
Google
mean,
Cloud team outdid themselves on that
good
one.
job, Google Cloud. And this is my boy Jim Fairweather over there who's running this, and also our guy Logan. But then Anthropic, I'm sorry, not Anthropic, Amazon invested, I know it was up to 8 billion. I don't know if they've done all the 8 billion. And the thing that I keep thinking, Jaden, and this is not financial advice, obviously, but Anthropic has a lot of friends out there. Okay. So
Mhm.
Microsoft is now really leaning into Anthropic. Why? Because people love Anthropic. By the way, ChatGPT is also phenomenal. But when you see I'm sorry, when you see Microsoft partnering with Anthropic, when they own 50% of OpenAI,
And are
that
making
has to
money
tell you,
off of
they're
OpenAI.
making so much money off of, like, guys, I'm going to say that again. Microsoft owns, I think it's 49% of OpenAI.
Well, they
Does everyone
did. I
understand
think
that?
the future rounds diluted it, but that
Okay,
was when
future,
they.
that's
Yeah,
fair. That's fair. But they invested 10 billion when Sam Altman needed it.
yeah.
Okay. That's how they own this giant chunk. And you're right, that all gets diluted. But the amount of money they're making off OpenAI is colossal. So the fact that they're partnering with Anthropic, and the fact that Anthropic is saying no to Siri, that was in the news yesterday, Jaden. I don't know if you saw that, how like apparently Apple first reached out to Anthropic to try to have them in Siri, and Dario Amodei was like, "We're too expensive for you," and so that's why they went to Google. There's just this moment in time where Dario Amodei is sitting down with Dennis Hassabis of Google DeepMind at Davos, and they're sort of like both making fun of like OpenAI. Do you know what I mean? Like, so they have Anthropic has partners everywhere. People tend to sort of see OpenAI as the evil empire. I don't think that's insignificant. I think that people are going to be sort of boosting up Anthropic in a way that they're not with OpenAI.
That's interesting. I think you're right. It may have a lot of goodwill. OpenAI has a lot of challenges, and I think probably due to a lot of these challenges, they probably want to get an IPO as soon as possible. One is like last quarter, Microsoft was paid $7.6 billion from OpenAI, which is pretty incredible for their $10 billion investment, and they're already like making $7.6
In a
billion a
quarter, in a
quarter. A
quarter.
quarter. Yeah, that's insane, right? ROI is amazing. So Microsoft has got to be thrilled. OpenAI is just making a lot of money, which I think is fair. But Anthropic, you're right. It has it has a lot of goodwill. It's the brand seemed to have carried it. I think maybe even more than Google. And Google's got a
Mm-hmm.
pretty shiny reputation, but
I do.
I think you go Anthropic, Google, OpenAI if you're picking, people's goodwill towards those companies, which is interesting. Anthropic has a completely different model where they're targeting developers and they're targeting enterprise,
Enterprise.
which is
Yeah.
spending has a much higher ticket than what OpenAI has.
Yep.
OpenAI is generating a lot more revenue right now, though. If we're
Yeah,
being
for
perfectly
sure.
honest.
But we're talking about value in IPO. Do
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, and so it's not just top line, right? That's the really interesting part about this. But Jaden, I also just want to, like, because you're the one that was talking about X and SpaceX and Tesla and everything else. And the thing that I kind of like want to just pivot to a little bit is that, Gene, we've done episodes on like Grok and like, oh, Grok, you're just killing me because the thing is, Grok as just a pure LLM is top three, right? I mean, top four. Like it's
Yeah.
unbelievably powerful. It's now coming out with its own, image generators, all that sort of stuff. The point is that when these companies, and say what you want about Elon, he's the greatest entrepreneur in the history of entrepreneurs. I
Yeah.
mean, space, Tesla, X, and then everything that they're doing with AI, sort of like under the hood with robotics and everything else. Gene, have you seen much about this? Like either what they want to do or what the plan is on this?
Okay, so it's not an official announcement, but we have some back records, so I'll break that down. But the one thing that I did want to say before, so basically the rumor is XAI and SpaceX are gonna merge pre
Okay.
IPO, which is interesting because SpaceX was already the biggest public or private company. And well, I guess Stripe's in there competing. We'll see what happens. In any case, what's really interesting to me though is there's also another announcement that Tesla is going to invest $2 billion into XAI. So it's kind of interesting because Elon's like merging his companies, but he's also like getting his other companies to invest in
Yeah.
these companies. And if you look at like the deal of Microsoft investing in OpenAI and how much money they're making now, if XAI and SpaceX do merge and go IPO, this is going to look really fantastic for Tesla's investment. So I think, it's going to be good for everybody. These deals just kind of grow, which is crazy. Okay, so here's what's happening with the merger though that I think was really interesting. So essentially, like I mentioned, this is not something that was like publicly discussed, but there's some recent filings showing that two new corporate entities were created in Nevada on January 21st. One of them is called K2 Merger Sub Incorporated. The other one's called K2 Merger Sub 2 LLC. And they're created, people are speculating these are two subsidies or two companies created for SpaceX and XAI to complete this merger, which is going to be really kind of a big deal. And it's especially a big deal when you look at the valuations of these two companies. So if you look at the Wall Street Journal, which just reported that Tesla's going to be putting $2 billion in to XAI. XAI has raised so much money last year. Oh, and of course, you also have to think of the roll-ups. I don't know why this space, but like XAI also bought X, previously Twitter. So
right,
you have
right,
Twitter
right.
that turned into XAI that is now going to get rolled in and merged with SpaceX.
Wait, Jaden, pause. I want to get that straight. So
Okay.
X is former Twitter.
Yeah.
XAI is what created Grok, I assume.
Yeah.
Right. And so who's buying who again?
So XAI purchased Twitter because
That's
Twitter kind of had like some problems where like they were getting valued basically on the valuation of like their ad revenue or whatever.
Yeah, it was bizarre.
And I think Elon realized that as an asset for a data asset for an AI model, X was worth so much more.
Yes.
So he rolled it into XAI. Now all of a sudden XAI has tons of users. I mean, it's very deeply integrated where Grok powers everything on
Yeah.
X and
Yeah.
yada. So when that happened, XAI was valued at $80 billion, and X was at $33 billion. So when they did that kind of merger. So what's interesting, SpaceX, it's been around since 2022, and they recently had like a secondary sale. So it's not like an official like round of funding, but like some of their employees could sell shares. And when that happened, it was valued at $800 billion. So, I mean, it's not like XAI, $80 billion, that's a lot of money, but like it's like 10% of the SpaceX company. So it's just like boosting SpaceX another 10%. I think maybe it's to try to make like a corporation that's like a little bit more robust. SpaceX, I mean, I have no idea, but I mean, speculating here, completely speculative without a lot of knowledge on this industry. I'm assuming SpaceX, it's got these amazing government contracts. It's got, a lot of corporate contracts shooting satellites into space. It's got Starlink again, which is a phenomenal product. But I think maybe people could worry that, look, maybe the government contracts dry up and then, the whole company would be severely, have some problems. So I think if you can just diversify and be like, no, look, we have X, we have XAI, we have Starlink, and of course, this really profitable rocket business. Between all of them, it's like very diversified. The company can only go down so much. And so I think that might be kind of the concept to putting together this super company. And the last thing I'll say, the reason why you would merge these, presumably unrelated companies, Elon Musk and a bunch of others have recently talked about putting data centers in space to train AI models for a bunch of different reasons that can make them more efficient and faster and all this kind of these different concepts. So anyways, SpaceX merging with them would be the reason.
If that sounds like science fiction, by the way, apparently the data center in space thing is a real thing, and it apparently makes total financial sense because it's like they cool, you know what I mean? Like it's just like all these reasons why it makes sense. I thought it was like a joke. I know we're coming up on time here, Jaden. It's fascinating about X, and just like one last thing to say about Grok, like you have to watch the administration. Like if the administration changes, like those contracts will go away overnight. And it's I'm not saying it's good or bad. I'm just saying that Grok is an unbelievably powerful model, and if they just put guardrails on it, that could go into tons of enterprises, but they won't do it. It's utterly bewildering to me. Although I will say that Grok is probably driving a lot of AI adoption among people, because when you're on X or Twitter, you just see people asking Grok for more context all the time. It's people using it. So it's just, I'm not making value judgments on this while I am on the whole Grok, like, doing the bad things it was doing. It's just, it's such an interesting world right now. Guys, listen, thank you for tuning in. There was so much we could talk for another hour. Stay tuned for a future episode on Jaden's on the AIbox.ai marketplace. I'm super psyched to talk about that. If you can leave a rating and review, we'd be super grateful. It's how sort of like people find the show and everything like that. We just do this for love of the audience and love of AI. So thanks for tuning in, and we will see you next time.